One of the biggest economic myths we have is that governments can grow their way out of debt. They cannot. I'm commenting on this because I recently watched a video from the Davos conference from a week or two ago, and you had a lot of very bright, successful people on the stage. And yes, they know a lot more than I. They're way more successful than I, but they don't know economics, and I know economics. And what they said about the government growing its way out of debt is completely false. I'll explain. They commented that governments are banking on being able to grow their way out of the debt and the deficits that they're creating because they've all been printing so much money recently. Well, that is what incurring debt and increased deficits is. It's printing money. The central bank buys the government debt, and that's how the government can keep borrowing and borrowing. It has a ready buyer, and the central bank also, from printing money and adding to the money supply, it redistributes purchasing power from the government, who's the first to borrow and use the new money. It redistributes to the government from those in the economic system who are the last to receive the new money. They lose purchasing power. In general, we all lose purchasing power year by year due to inflation, and that is the government printing money to mostly finance the government. That's how the government always has more money and never runs out like state and local governments. Anyway, the discussion was about governments growing their way out of debt. Well, that is a massive fallacy. Governments cannot grow their way out of debt. The confusion is the idea that economic growth means higher incomes and therefore increased tax payments to the government. It does not. It does not. When there is economic growth, there is an increase in the number of goods and services available. There is not an increase in the amount of money in the economy. Businesses don't produce money. When they produce new products, they don't produce money. Banks don't, well, sorry, banks do produce money. That's the problem. Banks and the central government, the central bank, which is the government, work together to expand the money supply and produce money. So it is the money printing that takes place separate and simultaneously to the growing economy. And just to be very clear, a growing economy does not need new and additional money. There's only so much money. That's the real savings and the real capital based on the real goods that have been produced and saved. If you print money, you're not creating new capital. You're just redistributing capital. The total amount of capital remains the same. So the government prints money and therefore raises prices separate and simultaneously to the economy producing goods and services. That economic growth, again, results in more goods and services, which should lower prices. I mean, it does in real terms, but it should lower nominal prices. It doesn't because the government, the central bank and the banks print money at a faster rate than businesses produce goods and services. So the prices rise instead of fall. So when we talk about governments growing their way out of debt, they don't really grow their way out of debt. They merely print money and raise prices and redistribute purchasing power and which reduces the value of the debt that they owe. If they print enough money, they can wipe out all of their debt. I mean, if they doubled the money supply and doubled prices, their debt would have. So people conflate the two things. They don't understand the difference between the two things. And people just naturally assume that if you have economic growth, you're having higher incomes. You are not. So two separate things: money printing, which raises prices, and the production of goods and services, i.e. economic growth, which lowers prices. The government benefits from printing money and raising prices, and it devalues the amount of its debt. That's what they're really talking about when they say the governments can grow their way out of debt. Do they know this? Some do, yeah. The ones who really understand the system, they probably certainly do. Do most politicians who talk about growing their way out of debt understand this? No. Do I think most people on that stage at Davos discussing this know this? I doubt it. Christine Lagarde, who was on the stage, might, but I doubt it. And one minor point I'll add before I close. They were discussing governments hoping they can grow their way out of all this debt that they're creating now. No discussion about why they're creating all this debt. They don't need to create all the debt. They can just not print money. They cannot spend more than they have. They can refrain from spending new and additional amounts, but they don't. And none of it does anyone any good. It's not needed. It's not helpful. And all it does is cause problems. So to discuss their growing their way out of debt is to really kind of miss the whole problem, which is the government's being so profligate and printing and spending just to benefit their political careers. That's really all it's about, nothing more. It helps no one. Make me prove it. I'll be glad to. Well, that's what these videos are here for. That's what I'm trying to do. So please see my other videos and you'll find proof of this, and I'll be doing a lot more. Okay, thank you very much. Please like and subscribe. That would really help me out. Thanks so much. Bye.